Ever felt like someone was watching you from the darkness? Tonight, I'm sharing real stories that happen to ordinary people, just like you. Stories that will make you check your locks twice. Let's begin. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true horror stories. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, let me know. I'm not usually the kind of guy who gets shaken up easily. I've been on the road more nights than I can count, driving through storms, dodging deer, chugging gas station coffee like it's holy water. But that night in the fall of 2020 still crawls into my head when I drive through the mountains. At the time, the world was still pretty locked down. Masks, travel bans, empty highways, just eerie silence everywhere. My buddy Luke and I were trying to keep our flooring business alive, so we took on whatever jobs we could find. A contractor we knew had a few gigs lined up in western Ohio and southern Michigan. Small town renovations, mostly old houses that needed new floors. Luke had just bought this old Ford F-150 from his cousin. It wasn't much to look at, but the engine purred and the heater worked good enough for us. We left from Scranton, Pennsylvania around 6 in the evening. The plan was to drive through the night, crash at a motel near Toledo, and start fresh in the morning. Luke wasn't just any co-worker. He was like a big brother. He used to be a Marine, though he never really talked about that unless he'd had a few beers. I'd known him a couple years, but there was something about him that always made me feel safer, like no matter what happened, he'd have a plan. We hit the 2-lane stretch of Route 6 that snakes through the Appalachian Mountains. If you've ever driven that road, you know how sketchy it is. Blind curves, steep drops, no streetlights, and thick fog that rolls in like smoke from nowhere. Luke leaned back in the passenger seat, feet on the dashboard, hat pulled low. "Wake me if we hit a bear or a UFO," he mumbled before dozing off. I chuckled, eyes glued to the twisting asphalt ahead. About 3 hours in, I noticed the gas gauge dipping low. The next sign said fuel stop 5 miles ahead, so I pulled in. The place was barely lit, one flickering neon sign and 2 ancient pumps. Inside the store, there was this guy behind the counter wearing a mask under his chin, watching some talk show on a little TV. I grabbed some Red Bulls, a bag of jerky, and a couple bottles of water. The only other car, there was a dark red SUV parked a few pumps away. I didn't pay much attention to it, just a quick glance. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat, but the windows were tinted so dark it was like staring into a mirror. When I got back into the truck, Luke stirred. "We good?" he muttered. "Yeah, all set. You can keep sleeping." He nodded and drifted back off. I pulled back onto the highway. The time on the dash read 12:17 a.m., and the world outside was nothing but darkness and fog. Half an hour later, something caught my eye in the rearview mirror. Headlights. Same shape, same color. Red SUV. At first, I didn't think much of it. It's a long road. Maybe they're just going the same way. But the longer I drove, the more it nagged at me. The guy stayed perfectly behind me, same distance, same lane, even when I switched lanes. Finally, I decided to test it. I slowed from 80 down to 65. So did he. I frowned, tightening my grip on the wheel. "Luke," I said, nudging his shoulder. He blinked awake instantly, like soldiers do. "What's up?" "I think somebody's following us." He leaned up, peering into the side mirror. "That red SUV behind us." "Yeah, from the gas station." He exhaled slowly. "I saw that guy looking at you when you walked past him." That made the hairs on my neck stand up. "What do we do?" I asked. "Let's make sure it's not just in your head," Luke said. "Change lanes again." I did. The SUV followed. "Now slow way down," he ordered. I dropped to 50. The guy matched me perfectly, keeping a few car lengths behind. Luke's voice turned sharp. "Pull over on the shoulder. Kill the lights." "What? You serious?" "Trust me. Let's see what he does." My heart thudded. I guided the truck to the shoulder and hit the hazards. The SUV slowed down. Then, unbelievably, he pulled over 250 feet behind us. Luke's tone went cold. He's not lost. He's hunting. My pulse spiked. What do we do? Luke looked around the truck's cab. Weapons. What do we got? Folding knives. The toolbox in the back. A hatchet. He grabbed the hatchet, tested the weight in his hand. Good enough. Man, we don't even know if he's armed, I whispered. He smirked. Oh, he's armed. Nobody that confident rolls up behind strangers on a dark highway without a gun. Before I could say anything, he told me, all right, floor it. I slammed the gas. The truck shot forward, tires kicking gravel. I merged back onto the highway, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. The red SUV followed. Son of a bitch, Luke muttered, gripping the door handle. The fog was thick, the road slick, and the headlights behind us looked like angry eyes in the mirror. Brake check him, Luke said. I stared at him. You want me to what? Tap the brakes hard. Make him back off, or ram us if he's that stupid. Then we deal with him. Dude, that could kill us. Or save someone else, he said grimly. I shook my head. No way, man. We're not doing that. He clenched his jaw but didn't argue. Instead, he reached behind the seat and pulled out this handheld spotlight he used for job sites. All right, then. Let's see this bastard. He rolled the back window down and leaned out, holding the light. I heard the wind whip past him as he aimed it backward. Nothing, he said. Windows are blacked out. I gritted my teeth. I've got an idea. I swerved into the left lane suddenly, letting the SUV draw up beside us. Now! I shouted. Luke flipped the spotlight on, shining it straight through the driver's side of the SUV. For a split second, maybe 3 seconds, we saw him. And I'll never forget what I saw. The guy was huge, had to be at least 6'2", 6'3". He was hunched over the wheel, pale face twisted like a mask, wild greasy hair, eyes wide and glassy. His mouth hung open in this weird half smile, like he was enjoying it. Luke whispered, Jesus Christ. The man turned his head slightly, and I swear he looked straight at us through the glare. Then, just as quick, he slowed down and took the next exit ramp toward a truck stop. I didn't stop driving for another hour. When we finally pulled into a rest area near Cleveland, Luke got out, paced around, chain smoking like his nerves were shot. You should have brake checked him, he said finally, flicking ash. Guy like that doesn't stop at one attempt. He'll try again with somebody else. Maybe, I said quietly, but maybe we'd be the ones dead on the side of the road. He didn't answer. We got back in the truck, and for the rest of the night, neither of us spoke. To this day, we still argue about it sometimes. Luke swears that man was a killer. Me, I don't know. But the look in that guy's eyes, it wasn't just anger. It was something worse, like he'd already decided what he wanted to do to us. I just thank God he didn't get the chance. And every time I drive through that pass now, I keep my speed steady, eyes on the mirrors, wondering if he's still out there, looking for another set of headlights in the dark. I remember that fall like it was yesterday, 2016, right in the middle of the killer clown panic that swept across America like wildfire. I was 13 then, old enough to think I knew the world, but still young enough to believe my cousin when he said monsters weren't real. That weekend, I was staying over at his place, a double-wide trailer perched halfway up a gravel hill in rural Pine Creek, Kentucky. My aunt and uncle had just redone the inside. New floors, fresh paint, even a big screen TV that sat in the living room across from a sagging couch. The place always smelled faintly of coffee and wood smoke. It was Friday night, early October. The air had that sharp, cool bite that made the trees whisper louder. My cousin Travis and I were the only ones still awake. Everyone else, his parents and 2 younger sisters, had gone to bed hours earlier. We were slouched on the couch, flipping through Netflix, a half-eaten bowl of popcorn between us. "Dude, this clown thing is getting wild," Travis said, scrolling through YouTube on his phone. "People dressing up, chasing cars, breaking into yards. There was one right here in Kentucky, like 2 towns over." I rolled my eyes. "Yeah, I saw those videos. It's just dudes trying to go viral. Nobody's dumb enough to do that for real around here." "Maybe not dumb," he said, smirking. "But you know how many meth heads we got in Pine Creek? Some of them probably think they are clowns." I laughed, but my eyes drifted toward the living room window. Behind it was nothing but black, the stretch of woods that started right where the backyard ended. My uncle had motion lights out there, bright enough to light half the hill, but right now they were off. The only light came from the TV and that little bulb above the kitchen sink behind us. The rest of the house was swallowed in dark. Then, crunch. Something shifted in the woods. I froze mid-bite, popcorn halfway to my mouth. "You hear that?" I whispered. Travis muted the TV. We both sat still, listening. The sound came again, like dry leaves being stepped on, but the wind had been picking up all evening, so we didn't panic. "Probably a raccoon," Travis said, shrugging. "Or a deer," I added, trying to sound casual. We turned the movie back on, but my ears kept straining. 10 minutes later, the motion light at the back of the house snapped on. Bright white flooded the tree line. Travis and I both looked. "See? Animal," he muttered. I nodded. The light stayed on for about 10 minutes, then faded out. We relaxed again, started arguing about what to watch next, Stranger Things or The Walking Dead. But then, just as I got up to grab a drink, another light came on. This time, the one by the side door, the one that led into the laundry room. It was close. The thin white blinds over the glass panel glowed, and I swear I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel outside, slow, uneven. Then the door handle rattled. Not like a gentle test, like someone really trying to open it. My chest seized up. "Travis," I hissed, my voice barely a whisper. He was already half standing. "What?" "Someone's at the door, man." He turned the TV off instantly. The living room went quiet except for the faint clink, clink, clink of the knob shaking. We both stood there frozen for maybe 3 seconds before Travis bolted down the hall. "Dad!" he shouted. The sound stopped. For a moment, everything went still. Then, as if mocking us, the front porch light came on too. I crept toward the front window, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it might shake the glass. I pulled the curtain back a sliver, but there was nothing. Just the faint rustle of trees down the hill and the hum of the porch light. Travis's dad, Uncle Ricky, came stomping out of the bedroom barefoot, pulling a hoodie over his shoulders and gripping his pistol. "What the hell's going on?" he growled, sleep still rough in his voice. "Someone's outside," Travis said, pointing. "Side door first, now the front." Ricky's face tightened. "Stay here." He slipped out the front door and stepped onto the porch. Travis and I followed behind him, even though he told us to stay inside. The cold air hit me, sharp and earthy, and I could smell the wet leaves from the woods. Ricky shone his flashlight around the yard, the beam slicing through the mist. Nothing. The night was dead quiet. Then he swept the light down the gravel driveway and froze. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. At the bottom of the hill, near the road, someone was standing in the ditch. A man. No, a clown. He wore one of those cheap party city suits, blue and yellow with oversized red buttons. A mask with a grin painted too wide. The flashlight glared off the plastic, making it look like the smile moved. He didn't move, though. Just stood there, facing us. Then, slowly, he waved. A lazy, exaggerated wave, like he'd been waiting for this moment all night. Ricky raised his gun. "You better get the hell off my property," he shouted. The clown didn't move. Ricky fired a warning shot into the dirt. The sound cracked through the night like thunder. Birds exploded from the trees. That finally did it. The clown turned, stumbled a bit, then sprinted across the road and disappeared into the woods on the other side. Ricky kept the flashlight aimed that way for a good 30 seconds. Then he lowered it, his jaw tight. "What the hell's wrong with people?" he muttered, shaking his head. We didn't go back inside for a while. Ricky sat on the porch steps, pistol resting on his knee, eyes fixed on the tree line. Travis and I sat beside him, shivering under a blanket we grabbed from the couch. "Think he'll come back?" I asked quietly. Ricky looked at me, then out at the woods again. "Not tonight," he said. "Not with me sitting here." We stayed up till the sun started to rise, the woods finally looking like woods again instead of a black wall of nightmares. No one came back that night, but the next morning, when Ricky went down to check the driveway, he found something in the gravel. A single red balloon tied to a stick. We removed it, threw it away, but the image never left me. And every fall since then, when the leaves start turning and the air smells like smoke and earth, I still catch myself looking out the window before bed, just in case. It was early October, that in-between time when summer still clung to the days, but the night started carrying that sharp edge of fall. I remember because the air smelled like burning leaves and the neighbors down the road had just started putting out their Halloween decorations. I had just come home from my college classes for the weekend. My mom had been begging me to visit. We lived on the outskirts of a small town in Pennsylvania, tucked back on about 10 acres of land surrounded by dense woods. Our place was old, built by my grandfather, the kind of house with creaky stairs, mismatched windows, and a porch that moaned every time you stepped on it. My younger brother, Cody, was already begging to do a campfire that night. It had become sort of a family tradition. S'mores, ghost stories, and music playing low from my dad's old speaker. My parents had built a fire pit years ago near the tree line, about 100 yards from the house. It sat beside what used to be our playground, just a rusted swing set now, half sunk into the dirt. "Come on, live. You can't say no to s'mores," Cody teased, tugging on my sleeve. Yeah, I'm coming," I said, smiling. Truthfully, I'd missed it. The quiet, the stars, even the smell of smoke that clung to everything afterward. By the time it got dark, my dad had the fire going. The flames threw light over the old trees, their branches flickering like hands reaching in and out of the glow. My mom sat in a camping chair with her coffee, and Cody was already roasting marshmallows, burning them to black because that's how he liked them. "Geez, you're going to set your stick on fire again," I laughed. "Relax, I'm a professional," he said, blowing out the flaming marshmallow dramatically. We sat around talking about nothing. Work, school, random town gossip. It felt peaceful in that warm, familiar way fall nights do. The woods were quiet except for the occasional crack of branches shifting in the wind. After about an hour, I got up to grab my blanket from the porch, but my dad stopped me. "Don't bother. I'll grab the lantern from the shed while I'm at it." "Fire's burning down," he said, stretching his legs. The shed was maybe 50 feet into the dark, a dull metal structure barely visible from the firelight. He disappeared into the dark with the flashlight in hand, the beam dancing between the trees. That's when we first heard it. A faint crunch of leaves from somewhere past the fire pit. Cody glanced at me. "You heard that, right?" "Probably just a deer," I said automatically. But I caught my mom's face. She looked toward the woods too, lips pressed tight. Then came another sound. Not random like an animal, but steady footsteps, slow and dragging. My mom called out softly, "Rick, that you?" From the dark came silence. A second later, the flashlight beam reappeared. My dad emerging from the direction of the shed, swinging the lantern in his hand. "What's up?" he asked. We told him what we'd heard. He aimed the light into the woods. "Could be a coyote, maybe a raccoon," he said, though his tone sounded like he was trying to convince himself. We let it go after that. The noise stopped, the fire crackled again, and Cody started a story about a ghost bus driver that supposedly haunted one of the back roads nearby. We all laughed it off. But 20 minutes later, the sound came back. It was louder this time. Branches shifting, deliberate steps. The firelight didn't reach that far, but we could all hear it. Cody whispered, "That's not a deer." I felt a chill crawl up my neck. "Rick," my mom said again, quieter this time. Dad stood up. "Who's out there?" he called, his voice hard and clear. Nothing. Then someone coughed. A man's cough. Deep, raspy, close. The fire popped, throwing sparks into the air. My heart slammed against my ribs. Dad raised the flashlight and aimed it toward the sound. At first, we saw nothing, just dark trunks and orange leaves. Then the beam hit something pale. A man stood halfway between two trees, just far enough that the light barely caught him. He wasn't moving. His clothes blended into the dark, but I could see his face, or rather the pale oval of it, staring straight at us. When the light hit him full on, he turned and ducked behind a tree. "Everyone inside," my dad said, low and firm. "Now." No one argued. Cody dropped his marshmallow stick. My mom grabbed the flashlight off the cooler, and we ran. I could feel my legs shaking as we sprinted across the yard, our shadows jerking in the firelight behind us. Once inside, my dad locked every door and pulled the blinds shut. The whole house felt colder. We gathered in the living room, nobody talking, all of us listening. "Maybe he's lost," Mom said after a moment, her voice trembling. Dad shook his head. If he was lost, he'd have called out. I peeked through the window, careful not to touch the curtain. The fire outside still burned, but the woods behind it were black. Then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The fire was dying out, but I could see movement behind it, a figure stepping just close enough that the glow caught the edge of his jeans. "He's still out there," I whispered. Dad came over, saw it too, his jaw clenched. "Stay here," he said. "Rick, don't," Mom started, but he was already grabbing the old shotgun from the closet. He stepped onto the porch and yelled, "You need to leave. This is private property." The man didn't answer, didn't move. My dad aimed the flashlight again, and just like before, the figure slipped backward into the trees. Dad stood there for a moment, then came back in, locking the door again. "He's gone," he said, but his voice didn't sound sure. We stayed up most of the night, the house silent except for the old clock ticking in the hall. Around 2 in the morning, my mom finally dozed off on the couch. I sat by the window, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a hunter who got turned around. But as I sat there, something caught my eye. Across the yard, right by the edge of the trees, the swing set moved, just slightly, back and forth, the metal chain squeaking softly like they used to when we were kids. There was no wind. I stared until my eyes watered, but I couldn't see anyone near it. The fire had burned down to ash by then, just faint orange coals glowing in the dark. The next morning, the fire pit looked like it always did. Chairs tipped over, marshmallow sticks scattered, one of the blankets still damp from dew. But when my dad walked the woods, he found something. Boot prints, big ones, leading through the trees and along the fence line. Prints that circled back toward the house before disappearing deeper into the woods. He followed them for about 50 yards until they just stopped. No trail, no sign of anyone, just the quiet hum of morning and birds beginning to wake. That night, my mom made him move the fire pit closer to the porch. We never did another campfire by the woods again. But sometimes, when I visit home and the night air turns cold and still, I'll stand out on the porch and listen. And every so often, I swear I can hear it, faint footsteps on the leaves, somewhere just beyond the trees. I was 16 the autumn it happened, old enough to feel unstoppable, but too young to understand how quickly that feeling can vanish. My name's Lena, and back then my friends and I thought we owned our little town of Oak Ridge, A quiet middle-class place where the most exciting thing that ever happened was a Friday night football game or someone's older brother managing to buy a bottle of vodka from the gas station clerk who didn't care to check IDs. It was late October, chilly enough that your breath came out white, the trees nearly stripped bare except for a few stubborn orange leaves clinging on. That night, we decided we were going to have fun, which in our teenage vocabulary meant get tipsy and talk about nothing for hours. There were 6 of us. Me, Tori, Haley, Jess, Ryan, and Bree. We'd been best friends since middle school. We thought we were clever, sneaking around with that cheap plastic bottle of vodka that reeked like nail polish remover. "Where we drinking?" Bree asked, tugging her hoodie tighter as her teeth chattered. "Not behind the store again," Jess said. "Too risky. The park's better. Nobody goes there after dark anymore." She meant Oak Ridge Central Park, a big spread of open grass, bike trails, and a duck pond in the middle. The town had put up lights along the main paths, but most of the grass and trees off trail were just shadows. I hesitated. "Isn't that where that homeless guy got arrested last month?" "Yeah," Ryan said, rolling her eyes. "Exactly why no one will bother us. He's long gone." We laughed it off. Back then, fear wasn't something we took seriously, so we went. We huddled up near the far side of the park where the grass met a small slope lined with thin trees. The street lights from the path were distant glows behind us. The air smelled of damp leaves and cold earth. Bree pulled the vodka out of her tote bag and we all cheered like idiots. "To bad decisions," Tori giggled, raising the bottle. "To teenage stupidity," I added. And we all laughed, passing the bottle around. It burned like fire, but we pretended it didn't. We played Never Have I Ever, and soon the giggles turned into those belly laughs that only happen when you're tipsy and warm from being surrounded by your favorite people. For about 30 minutes, everything was perfect. Then it happened. A phone rang. It was sharp and loud in the cold quiet, some generic ringtone, not one any of us recognized. Haley frowned. "Who's that?" We all checked our bags, but nobody's phone was ringing. The sound echoed again, and that's when Tori whispered, "It's not us." She pointed. Maybe 30 feet away, near the paved path, a dark figure stood perfectly still, just a silhouette. The glow from the path lights barely caught his outline. Tall, wearing something long, maybe a coat. He raised his arm, looked at something in his hand. The ringtone cut off. Nobody spoke for a moment. "Probably just someone walking," Jess said, trying to sound casual, but her voice trembled. "Then why is he standing there?" Bree whispered. The figure didn't move. He just stood there, facing us. I could hear my heart pounding. "Okay," I said quietly. "Let's just grab our stuff and go." Everyone started shoving bottles and jackets into their bags. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the vodka cap into the grass. And then he moved. Slowly at first, stepping off the path toward us. Okay, he's coming this way," Haley hissed. "Run," Tori said. "Run right now." At first I hesitated. Maybe he was just coming to tell us to leave. Maybe a park worker. But then I heard the sound of footsteps quickening, heavy and fast against the grass. "Go!" Bree screamed. We bolted. The nearest exit was up a hill that led to the parking lot. The slope was steep and slick with dew. My lungs burned. My legs were jelly from vodka and fear. Behind us, I heard running. I turned my head for half a second, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The man was sprinting full speed, his outline jerking wildly as he came up the hill after us. "Oh my God, he's chasing us!" I shouted. "Don't look back," Ryan cried. We ran like animals, screaming, stumbling, clutching our bags. My boot slipped and Haley grabbed my arm, pulling me back up. The sound of him running grew louder, closer, then silence. Just as we reached the top of the hill, the sound stopped. I turned again, gasping, expecting to see him right behind us. He wasn't there. The grass below was empty. The path beyond was still. The only sound was our ragged breathing. What the hell was that? Bree said, her voice cracking. Jess was crying, mascara streaking down her face. We need to go home now. We ran out of the park and didn't stop until we reached the 24-hour gas station on Main Street, where the fluorescent lights felt like safety itself. We stood there, panting and shaking. Nobody said anything for a while. Then the clerk, an older man who always worked nights, came out and frowned. You girls okay? You look like you saw a ghost. Haley nodded weakly. Something like that. None of us told our parents. We were too scared we'd get grounded for drinking. The next few weeks, we avoided the park completely. But something about that night never left me. I'd walk past the park on my way to school and feel that same cold shiver crawl up my spine, like eyes watching from the tree line. A year later, it happened again, only worse. There was a story in the Oak Ridge Sentinel. Local man found dead in Central Park. Unprovoked attack, no suspects. The photo of the park in the newspaper looked exactly where we'd been sitting that night. When I read it, something inside me twisted. The memory hit me hard, sharper than ever. The ringtone, the shadow, the sprinting figure. I called Tori later that day. Do you ever think about that night? I asked quietly. She was silent for a few seconds. Then she said, every time I walk past there. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew what we were thinking. Whoever that man was, he hadn't just been wandering the park that night. He'd been looking for someone, and for a while, it had been us. I still live near Oak Ridge. The park's been renovated since then. New lights, security cameras, trimmed trees. People walk their dogs there again, but I've never gone back after dark. Sometimes when I drive past and see the empty benches and the pale glow of the lamps on the paths, I think about how close we came to being another headline. And sometimes, when I'm up late and my phone rings in the quiet, that same hollow ringtone echoing in my memory, I still hear the footsteps.